Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I'm so excited today. We're going to be talking with someone who's in Boulder, Colorado. Woo! My old stomping grounds. And so gotta love talking with somebody back in Colorado. And we're going to have a fantastic discussion today. So please join me in welcoming Ashish Kothari to our program today. Welcome, Ashish. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Deb, and a very happy new year to you and to all of your listeners.
Also to you. You know, 2025 is going to rock, right?
Yes. And well, every year rocks, every moment does.
It does.
That's kind of how I live my life and try and, preach others. Even if we are down in the lowest of the lows, it's our choice and our attitude that determines our experience, right? And how we work through it. So now 2025 year, really excited about what comes this year. And look, this is already a great start. I had a great podcast yesterday. And on the 3rd, where I'm talking with you. So, I can't think of a better way to start the day than to engage more people in a different way of approaching.
And we're going to be talking about happiness. I mean, it cannot get any better than that,
exactly.
Right? So let me tell folks a little bit about your background, and then we will jump into this fabulous discussion. So Ashish Kothari is an executive coach, author, consultant, and founder of Happiness Squad, a company focused on helping individuals and organizations make flourishing their competitive edge and operate at their fullest potential. Ashish is the author of the best-selling book, Hardwired for Happiness, in which he outlines an easy-to-follow recipe that can help anyone increase joy, health, love, and meaning in their lives. Prior to starting Happiness Squad, Ashish was a partner at the global management consulting firm McKinsey Company and spent over 2 decades helping thousands of leaders and their organizations achieve breakthrough performance through increasing their effectiveness, building more human-centric cultures, and transforming capabilities at scale. Ashish has a master's degree in business administration from Chicago Booth and a bachelor's degree and master's degree in chemical engineering, which really makes me wonder about how you got into this, from the Indian Institute of Technology in Mumbai, India. He is married and lives, as we said, in Boulder, Colorado, with his beautiful wife, Lizzie, his son, Ashwin, and their pug, Hufflepuff. So again, Ashish, welcome.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you for that kind intro. It is truly, as I said, a delight to be talking with you.
It is. Well, I mentioned that you started your career as a chemical engineer. You've done several different things. How did you decide that helping people with happiness is your true calling in life?
Yeah. So look, it truly is my second mountain journey, Deb. I turned 50 last year.
Okay.
And I really got on this path when I was 42 or 43. And so here's the background story. I was lucky. I'm very grateful to have been born to 2 parents who were very, very academically brilliant. My mother was a gold medalist and a PhD in calculus.
Wow.
My father was at the top of his state in his engineering school, and then he joined Reserve Bank in India. And so, education and excellence was always something that was really prioritized. Growing up, I grew up in India. And it was, as I always say now in life, everything has 2 sides, right? There is no good or bad, white or black, cold or heat. It's really everything is duality is how we live. Well, a beautiful gift that I got in my very young years from them was this notion of going for the best, going for perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was in, I think, second grade, I'd come home and I had got about 97 on 100 in my math exam. And my mom very lovingly, there was always so much love. There was no shame. There was always support.
Right. It wasn't, why didn't you do better?
No, but it was like, look, I looked at the 3 that you missed, and I know you know the answers, and I know you, and you probably got done 30 minutes before the class. If you just reviewed your answers, you would have got 100 next time, right? This time, and you could probably do it next time too. So, we always, for a 8-year-old, I think the power of words, I associated perfection. It was the price you had to pay to be loved.
Right.
And to be really seen. Even though love was never in question. My parents dedicated their whole life to us. My mom just turned 80, by the way. I've celebrated with her in India for 3 weeks. It was magical. But anyway, that gift of going for the best, going for perfect served me really, really well. I did my engineering at IIT, which is one of the hardest schools to get into in the world. There's about 200,000 applicants and 2,000 get selected.
Wow.
Through a pure quantitative exam. It doesn't matter what you are, what you've done, what you want to achieve. It is purely on exam-based, scores. But anyway, got through that very quickly. From that, got the chance to come to the US with my first job. And I find myself at 23, Deb, in the US with $5,000 in my pocket, name of one person I know, and a job with IBM. And then what became, that gift continued serving me. I rose, I worked, I always was willing to work harder than the next person, continuously learn. And I shot through, every job that I held. I got my MBA part-time at University of Chicago. Those were about 120-hour weeks between school and consulting and being on the road 5 days a week. But anyway, I got to a place, as I mentioned, when I was 42, 43, we just moved to Boulder, Colorado. And I was realizing that, from somebody who came here with one contact and $5,000, I was at a place where if I wanted, I could retire.
Right.
Not work a single day the rest of my life. Everything I had wanted to achieve, I had on a platter. I was a partner at one of the top firms. I was very well regarded for my work. I had a large set of clients who I loved working with. I loved the firm and the work that I was doing. I was happily married. I loved my wife every day more than the day before. We've been married together almost for now 16 years. I had a beautiful son. My health was still good. My parents were great. My network of friends and relationships had blossomed. I'd always cared about people. So, think about all these things. Everything was good. Everything was green. Everything was perfect.
There's a but in here. I can tell.
Yeah, that's it, right? So everything was great. And yet my internal reality was that every morning I was waking up with debilitating stress and anxiety. I was waking up feeling like I needed to throw up, and I didn't know the answer why. Why is it that I have it all? I've actually executed what I learned in my younger years around what does it take to be successful and hence be happy. Why am I not happy? And it wasn't that I was depressed. It wasn't that I was, always stressed. But it was just every morning I would wake up this way and not know why. I experienced now, as I can say, I experienced happiness, but I wasn't happy.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Things happen and they become happy, and then you go back to kind of busy or, anything else that you want to choose. And that's what really got me started on the journey. I think that was the wake-up call. I'm lucky, a lot of people, Deb, life wakes us up. Some of us lose a loved one, we end a relationship, we get sick. And through that, we start to re-examine our life and what matters and what we are here for. Luckily for me, it was none of that. It was just it came in the form of this anxiety. And I decided that I was going to go back to what I had learned from my parents, which is you figure it out. You work hard, you don't stop. When going gets tough, you get tougher. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to find the answer. I'm not going to take the easy route. I'm not going to go see a psychiatrist, as many people recommended, and do a therapy exercise around why it matters. I think it would have helped me a lot. Nothing against therapy.
Right.
Others said, go see a doctor and they'll give you a pill.
Oh, yes. Medicaid.
Right?
And you do live in Colorado.
Right. So, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to live through life numb. So I said, you know what? I will work it out. And so I really shifted and I started reading as much as I can in 3 very different disciplines. I started going to spirituality, reading texts, the Quran, the Hindu texts, the Bible, Buddhism, Stoicism, all of these disparate spiritual traditions and wisdom traditions around, why do we suffer? What is going on with us? What makes us happy? I also started studying the field of positive psychology. 20 years ago, psychology shifted, 25 years ago now. Psychology shifted towards studying what makes people thrive rather than what keeps us sick. And I started researching and reading that and started to experiment with interventions through that in my life and the life of others. And then I also started reading works in neurosciences because through all of this work, what was clear was our mind, not our brain, was making our experiences, but the mind was a projection through our brain. So what's going on in our brain, neurologically, that creates a certain experience versus another? And what I found blew my mind, right? What I found blew my mind, which became the basis of the book, around was this notion, Deb, that we are wired for fear. Our brains evolved to keep us safe, not happy.
Right. Flight or fight.
Right?
Flight or fight.
Exactly. Against a physical threat-rich environment. 20,000 years before that, we lived in places where there was so much danger around.
Right.
And all of us are lucky descendants of those whose ancestors had really good fight, flight, freeze.
Right. They survived.
They survived, the others didn't, right? And so now we find ourselves 22,000 years later in an environment with no physical threats of that kind.
Right.
But there is so much psychological and emotional threats. A war here, one of the most politicized kind of, election that we've just gone through, inflation worries, economic worries, ecological worries, floods, famines. There is so much going on, Deb, around us. And the news doesn't do us any favors by amplifying the negative. I realized that was at the heart of what I was experiencing, which is my, sympathetic nervous system was on fire. It was constantly, making me run on adrenaline and cortisol. And that's what was also, that was making me anxious. Right. The other thing that was making me anxious, I realized, I know it now, I was fundamentally suffering what I call a crisis of meaning. So I was doing great work, but the work that I was doing beyond earning a paycheck and making an impact in others' lives, around financial gains was not tied to kind of my own, what I cared about. And so, the work didn't have personal meaning, and that's true for so many. 70-80% of the people, when asked, they say, yeah, I work as a way to live my life outside and find meaning outside.
I have a job.
I have a job. And to me, that was also at the heart of kind of what I was experiencing. And so anyway, that's when I realized I started practicing. My life changed very quickly. I started affecting so many others. All of a sudden, I realized as I integrated these practices into my own life, Deb, that I could actually do between 9 and 6 what was taking me earlier between 6 and 9. Right? I changed my practice areas in the firm, at McKinsey around organization and leadership and well-being. And that's when I got a chance to research how this applies when you apply in organizations. And again, what I've found through all the amazing research at Michigan Ross, at Oxford, at Harvard, was that these practices, when we integrate into our organization, into our leadership programs, into how we lead people, drive unbelievable returns for organizations, right? They are companies that are flourishing, where people are happier, are more satisfied, are 2x more creative,
Mhm.
12 to 30% more profitable, 20% more productive, have much higher shareholder returns. In fact, to the order of 2 to 3.5%. Massive, massive improvements.
Right.
Right. And so I was like, wow, this is what I want to really focus my life on, is if I can help people integrate, learn these practices, because by the way, no school teaches us this. You have an MBA,
No.
right? We teach us how to do accounting. We teach us caring, how to build things. In in marketing, we teach people how to market, but we never teach people how to be happy, how to be happier. And this work is so, so needed if we have to thrive. So anyway, that's what I dedicated my life to, is how can we take the learnings? How do we bring it and translate it? Take away the spirituality out of it, but really apply it and make it where businesses truly own it and make it a key part of their way of engaging people is through this work, so they can be at their best individually, and so they can lead and create better outcomes for their customers and the broader public.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned spirituality. I think, that can still be part of it when we're thinking, how can we serve others? And I think that's probably one of the basic tenets is, how can we be of benefit to others? And when we're in that mindset, that helps with the happiness and all of those other things too.
Absolutely. And by the way, this was my other insight. These fields aren't disparate,
right?
Right. So first of all, what I realized was these 9 practices that I write about in the book Hardwired for Happiness, I didn't create them. Every one of those practices has been in our wisdom traditions for thousands of years. And by the way, by the very nature, they're secular because they show up in every practice, every religion, mindfulness, gratitude, loving the other like you would, treating others like you want to be treated yourself, generosity, show up everywhere.
Right.
Meaning shows up everywhere. This notion of really knowing yourself and separating our experience of the world from the reality shows up everywhere. The reason why you do it might be different. In Hinduism, there's a strong belief that you get rebirth after rebirth.
Right.
So you want to keep moving forward, live a better life. In the case of Christianity,
right, you go to heaven.
Go to heaven. Here's what God said: do this, and you go to heaven. Otherwise, you're going to go to hell. Right? In Buddhism, there's a lot of talk around there is no individual self. It is just manifestation and non-manifestation. But the idea is, if you want to not suffer, then here's the things to do, and here's how you can serve others. So the reason why is different, but the what is the same. Right? By the way, the same what practices are now validated in positive psychology around across the globe, experiments and research that prove that these practices are actually shifting people's experience. Right? Nothing is changing out there, but how we are relating to it is changing.
Right.
And then neuroscience has the same practices that show that these practices, the reason they change our experience is because these practices change our neural pathways. Our brain structures are fundamentally changing through meditation, through gratitude, through practicing compassion. And that's the power of this work, that we don't have to hold them as this or that.
Right.
The path is the same, and by the way, we don't have to do this because we want to be nice to people. As many business leaders, people are like, yeah, but I just want to drive profits, and
I need money. Give me money.
One of the individuals whose work I love, Alex Edmonds, he's a London Business School economist, says this thing beautifully for business leaders, which is at the heart of our work, which is, if you want to reach the land of profit, follow the road of purpose. Right? That's what's going to get you there. And so that's the beauty of this work, which is, if we do this work, we will create better outcomes. We will learn how to thrive rather than just survive. in this world that is becoming more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so interesting because obviously it starts at the top with the leader and the leadership. And we've probably all had those leaders that were horrible. I worked for a man one time who, I mean, he was horrible. He was horrible. But again, I got paid well, all sorts of things. And now I do remember telling him one time, you get to call me a bad word once. The second time I own your company. And he called me that bad word once, that B word. And I just looked at him and I went, that's your once. And and so part of that, I mean, we kind of had a mutual respect, but he ruled by fear. And did we get stuff done? Yes. Did we meet our goals? Yes. Did we exceed our goals? No, because we were not going to do anything extra for him. And I've really been thinking about this a lot because, I mentioned I'm in Atlanta. And, we recently lost Jimmy Carter. And so it's obviously been in the news so much, especially out here in Atlanta. And, everything is really starting up tomorrow with the visitation, all of that for him. And, there's a lot of people who aren't quite sure, what to think of him as a president. And that always happens. But he was one of those, especially later on in his life, he led with service. And I think that is why he is so beloved by so many, no matter what your political party is, and how could he give back? And that really was just everything that was important to him. Now, granted, his was based in his faith, but it really was, how can he help people? That was just, that was his entire goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Service and serving others is one of the ways that we find meaning in our lives.
Right.
Right. It reminds us there's nothing around us, Deb, if you think about it, there is nothing around that we find that doesn't in some shape or form serve others.
Right.
Not just people, but like, trees, plants, animals, everybody. There's a circle of life.
Right.
There's wisdom in that. We just somehow find ourselves, we're not a circle, we're at the top. And that creates so much suffering. We feel we can exploit and we can exert our power and control over others. And there's so many who are caught in that, there's so many who are caught in that. But I would say even for those, I was in a place where I would basically think bad about them, right? And I was like, oh my God. And I've worked with thousands of leaders, Deb, at this point. And what I find often is, those who are the hardest out there, the most horrible things that they will say and do are suffering so much in here.
Yes. Self-esteem, right? Fear.
They're suffering so much in here. And they weren't born that way, Deb.
Something happened.
Something happened that made them that way. And so when I first connect with that, it just brings a level of compassion for me.
Right.
Oh my God, for you to give out poison, how much poison must you have in you? And who put that in you? And what suffering have you gone through? Right? So it doesn't mean that I'm like, okay, fine, you can mistreat me, as you said.
Right.
Once. You get to call me this only once. But we can still do it from a place of compassion and care and guidance. Right. Maybe, more than words, when we can start to show up differently, maybe it starts to shift them. And what I find is, there's so many people say it's a terrible leader. And I find is, look, there are 10% of them for sure that I might say are so far kind of in there, not open to it. At some point, life will wake them up. But, 90% of them are just unaware.
Right. That's the way they've always functioned. It got the job done.
They're numb from down here. They learn to numb themselves and they're just operating from here through habits that they picked up. And if we can create an experience, if we can help them rediscover their wholeness, then I fundamentally believe that I think the suffering that they went through, the biggest tyrants can become the biggest teachers. In ancient India, there is this story of a dacoit. He was called, his name was Angulimal. It's a story, I don't know if it's real or not, but I think it's a powerful mythological story. And Angulimal was called, Ungli means a finger, finger. And he was called Angulimal because he would rob merchants and cut off a finger and put it in a garland, right? So he was feared.
He had trophies.
He was feared around the land. And one day in his pathway, he met the Buddha. And experiencing him changed him, and he became a disciple of Buddha and became one of the biggest teachers. Right? Khalil Gibran talks about this notion of, the sorrow that we hold, it carves a place in our heart to hold more joy. And so I truly believe, and I think that's the way in which, I want to take this work, and I do this work with organization, is let's help people rediscover their wholeness.
Right.
Let's take them back to kind of the basics, how we are all born. Look, you don't need to teach a kid, when you're 4, 3, 5, you don't need to be taught to be mindful, to be present, completely lost in what you're doing, to be joyful. A child is only going to cry if he's hungry, thirsty, not feeling well, has wet himself, right? Or hurt himself.
He's going to smile more than cry.
Yeah. And somehow we lose that. Yeah. All kids, we were the same. We would embrace, we would smile, and we lose that. And so I want to get people back to that state, reprogram, rewire our brains away from this, cocoons we build around ourselves to protect ourselves, to shed these beliefs of how things are versus not, that both bring us success, but also with them bring us so much suffering.
Right.
And if we can help people back home, if we can help them rediscover their own holiness, their own purity, their own wholeheartedness, I think what we create is a massive revolution. What we create is a wave that shifts not just their experience, not just makes them happier. And I always use the word happier rather than just happy, because happiness is not about just being happy all the time. It's about learning to be more resilient, learning to find the good even in the worst of times, and using that as a way to keep moving forward. We can help them find that. And we can help them find that, and we can help them create that wave of impact for others. The more senior of a leader, the large number of people they can support in the organizations they lead, but broadly in the community. That's the mission of Happiness Squad. That's the work we are trying to do. And I set a goal when I left 2 years ago from the firm. I said, listen, I want to figure out and create systems. I want to create programs. I want to create offerings to support others, and through them support 1 billion people, integrate this work into their lives. This part of the journey for me is not about money. Yes, you need money to get things done.
You have to, yeah.
But, once you recognize and connect that we come with nothing and we go with nothing.
You can't take it with you.
We can't take it. Nothing we can take. But what we can do is use the resources and the gifts of the universe to fundamentally serve others and drive so much impact for them. We can leave this planet, this world better.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do.
I love it. And you mentioned when we're young, I've had a lot of guests on the program where we've talked about leadership, and especially the masculine and the feminine, right? And how, it's, for the masculine perspective, you have to be tough. You have to be mean, all of those various things. Little boys don't cry. I mean, all of those things. And we're taught that when you show empathy, it's a negative. And I think, and of course, on the flip side, the feminine side is more empathy, more things like that. And what I love is when people are embracing both. There are times you have to be tough. You have to fire people. You have to, whatever it is that you're doing. but then you have to combine it with empathy. And I think that's where we're still learning how to do that, because especially my generation, I'm older than you. We were taught you have to be tough, and tough equated to being mean. And I think we can still be tough, but we can be empathetic. We can care about others at the same time.
Absolutely. And I love this notion. There's a beautiful book written by, a professor in, she teaches, it's called Shakti Leadership. So listeners can pull it up.
Mhm.
And it's co-authored by Raj Sisodia, one of the founders of Conscious Capitalism.
Mhm.
We had him on our podcast, last year.
Mhm.
And it's this notion of balance, right?
Mhm.
Even in ancient Indian traditions, the perfect human, the perfect being, if you will, is portrayed as half man and half woman.
Right.
Truly, Shiva and Shakti, yin and yang. In
Mhm.
every tradition, we talk about this duality and balance, right? Men, masculinity, power, control, strength needs to be balanced with the feminine, empathy, by the way, intuition, connection, right? I think we have to tie this together. To your point, yes, sometimes we need to be tough. If we are only soft and caring, we might not have a business,
Right. Because
right?
you're going to give
If
everything
things
away.
change, if things change, sometimes we might have to let people go, or sometimes we might have to take, significant salary reductions, if you will, a different way. But how we do it, how we communicate, how do we do it with our hearts open? And engage on that, and not just as a leader from the top say, hey, here's what I'm doing, but engage everybody in that dialogue, in that process.
Right.
Can make a big difference, can make such a massive difference in how, what happens to those cultures, what happens to those organizations, and how people feel after the fact, and how organizations do after the fact.
Right. Right. Yeah. A friend of mine on Facebook was mentioning that she was fired 2 days before Christmas. Really? Yeah, who does that? And now there are obviously times where that is necessary. We're not going to gloss over that. But she said, yeah, their company was actually going to be closed for the rest of the year for the holidays, and so they had to make this decision in their calendar year. And I was like, that's horrible. I mean, it's kind of like the people who break up before Valentine's Day so they don't have to give a Valentine's gift. No, but even if you're doing something like that, have empathy. Okay, you get a severance package, whatever it is. There are ways that you can still try to help people, and like we said, there are those that no, needs to be done, needs to be over, whatever it is. But when you can, try to remember. I tell people, remember that they're people. I work with physicians on how to treat patients, and one of the things that I tell them is, remember that we are people. We're not a patient, and we're not a diagnosis. And the same thing goes with, you're not a worker, you are, or an employee. You are a person, and, treat them like that. And back to that golden rule, treat them the way you'd want to be treated.
Yeah. And if you can find and give everyone, this is one of the core, practices that we try and get companies to integrate. So many companies, Deb, have they think about people as just resources, right?
The number.
They're a number, and hence people treat it as such. People show up to work, they'll do what they need to do, and then they leave, right? And they resent if work kind of extends into outside of kind of work hours. I often tell, and we teach this particular tool that was developed in Michigan Ross. It's called job crafting. How can you help every individual integrate meaning in what they're doing? How can we make work be a place for them to find real meaning
Mhm.
and purpose. So this work is not just about surviving.
Mhm.
It's about how they're making an impact in the world in a way that matters to them,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
I'm sure you've heard this story before, but for others who not, the story of these three people who were working on a construction site. They were all making walls.
Mhm.
And the first person was asked, "What are you doing?" And he
Mhm.
said, "Well, my father was a bricklayer and I'm a bricklayer.
Mhm.
And, this is how I feed my family.
Mhm.
I lay bricks, we build
Right.
it into a wall,
Mhm.
and, I don't have to worry about there's always
Mhm.
construction and I always have a job."
Mhm.
They go to the second person who's also on the other side of the site,
Mhm.
building a wall,
Mhm.
and he seems to be really into it. And they ask him, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he said, "You know what? I'm building a wall, but let me tell you my story. I'm an engineer, and
Mhm.
these are hard times. I couldn't
Mhm.
get a job.
Mhm.
The only job that I could get was to lay bricks,
Mhm.
but that's okay. This is my way of laying. Look at my wall compared to
Mhm.
other walls. It's
Mhm.
perfect. It's
Right.
symmetrical. There are no bad bricks.
Mhm.
Everything is lined up. In fact,
Mhm.
I'm kind of innovating around how I'm doing, and
Mhm.
I want people to know this because they'll realize that I'm capable of so much more, and I'm going to get
Mhm.
promoted, and
Mhm.
then I'll hopefully
Right.
become in charge of this site,
Mhm.
and then they'll realize, oh my God, he's so good. I'm going to then have a region, and I'm going
Mhm.
to,
Mhm. He'll be
right?
president of the company someday. Mhm.
Exactly. So this notion of
Mhm.
like, for me, this
Mhm.
is a profession, and
Mhm.
I'm going to keep moving up.
Mhm. Right.
So many of us are caught in that too,
Mhm.
right? And then they go to the third person, and he seems so lost
Mhm.
in the work. He
Mhm.
is so with it. You know how sometimes you see an artist, you see
Mhm.
a painter, and they are just in a different world,
Mhm.
right? They're completely lost. They're with it.
Mhm.
And that's how this person was.
Mhm.
And so they said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm building a cathedral.
Ah.
I'm building a cathedral.
Mhm.
I've faced lots of hardships in my life, and
Mhm.
God helped me through them. And I
Mhm.
want other people to discover
Mhm.
and experience His
Mhm.
power and grandiosity
Mhm.
and care.
Mhm.
And so that's what I'm building.
Mhm.
Three jobs, exactly the
Mhm.
same,
Right.
but how they were doing it
Mhm.
and the impact and
Mhm.
the outcome,
Mhm.
massive, right?
Right. Mhm.
This in real life, in today's story, in most recent times, you talked about Kennedy, who asked the janitor
Mhm.
at NASA. He said,
Mhm.
"What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm putting people on the moon."
Mhm. And
So
he's the janitor.
it's the janitor at
Mhm.
NASA, right? I'm
Mhm.
putting people on the moon.
Mhm.
That's what I'm doing. I'm not
Mhm.
cleaning toilets.
Mhm.
And that's the research Michigan Ross did, which
Mhm.
they showed Amy Wisniewski and Jane
Mhm.
Dutton, that when that people find meaning in different ways, even
Mhm.
they kind of think about their job, but as leaders, if we can help them craft their
Mhm.
job in a way
Mhm.
that has personal meaning for
Mhm.
them, they're almost doing
Right.
different jobs, Deb.
Mhm.
And the experience is they thrive,
Mhm.
but more importantly, they are more productive.
Mhm.
They
Right.
have better customer
Mhm.
satisfaction scores,
Mhm.
right? They stop treating people as
Mhm.
patients.
Mhm.
They're not just doing this thing. They
Mhm.
think about them as kind of being
Mhm.
a bigger part of the care
Mhm.
of what they're making in the
Mhm.
world.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, these are the kind of things that, they're simple things, but they're not. When was the last time somebody asked you this question, Deb? Think about this. Or if you're listening to this, when was the last time you asked this question to somebody that works for you, or your boss asked you this question? What drives you?
Mhm. Mhm.
What drives you? What gives you meaning?
Mhm.
What matters to you?
Mhm.
What do you love? What are
Right.
you good at?
Mhm.
And how can I help you
Mhm.
connect what you're doing here to what matters to you,
Right.
what drives you?
Mhm.
Think about that conversation.
Mhm.
When was the last time somebody had that with you?
Not. I can't remember when.
Right? And
Mhm.
that's the power.
Mhm.
If we are able to connect and tune it, so many
Mhm.
companies have purpose statements.
Mhm.
They have mission
Right.
and vision and
Mhm.
values.
Yes, and they're written in stone, and
They're
nobody knows
written
what they are.
somewhere,
Mhm.
and but
Mhm.
it's not lived.
Right.
And we can make this part of a regular dialogue. We can give people wins. Every individual is trying to get somewhere, do something. They have hopes, they have dreams, they have aspirations. If we can connect to those, if we can even talk about that and figure out ways for them to find those at work or support them through connections, give them the flexibility, what they need, education to move into that, that return is multiple fold coming back to us. But we have to stop and we have to open our hearts. We have to truly, deeply connect and care to inquire and to support and to encourage.
Right. And to actually, you mentioned the word care. I mean, how many times have we had our performance reviews, right? And some of those questions were asked, but they were asked because they were on the form. And the person asking the question really didn't care in the slightest. It was just, they were going down their little checklist. And, and there were times that they did care, but there were all, and we've all experienced that where you could have told them, I want to paint purple unicorns, and they would have written it down and gone to the next question, right? Because they were not paying any attention. But then I remember one time I was working with someone on her LinkedIn profile because she was wanting to change jobs. She was not happy where she was, and she'd been there a long time. But it was almost like what you were saying, it was the job. She got up, she did it every day. There's that old Dunkin' Donuts commercial, gotta make the donuts. And her boss happened to see that she was updating her LinkedIn profile and called her in, and she thought, oh, I'm fired. Right. And her boss, wise man that he was, said, what's going on? And she was honest with him. And he said, you are a valued employee. What can we do to keep you? And they actually transferred her to a totally different area. I mean, all sorts of stuff, but he cared. He could have just as easily said, fine, go, and that was what she expected. But, and she did, she called me and she said, well, I'm not leaving. And I went, oh, that's nice. And she said, no, I'm changing departments. And it was just incredible because it brought back her passion for working for that company, because she said, overall, it was a great company. It was just, she was tired of getting up and making the donuts. And so, you're so right. All we have to do is ask those questions and care about the answers.
Yeah. And not just ask them once, but make it a regular process.
Right.
Performance reviews once a year. It doesn't matter. Make it a two-way dialogue. Every quarter, connect, every month, connect with your individual, make a contract two-way. What can I do to help? What am I doing that can help you be more effective? When was the last time a boss or a supervisor asked that to their worker? We're always telling them what they can do to do better.
Yes.
And then you ask, what would you need from me to be more effective?
Right. Well, and I'm going to turn it around. We should also be, as the employee, we should be asking them, what can we do to help you? And I mean, how many times do they get asked that?
Yeah, I love that. In the end, it's about, so we created a framework, Deb, in the work I do on the organizational work, and we call it Pearl, and my wife coined the word. I had the 5 levers. She's more creative. We were sitting in Costa Rica. We were sitting on the beach, and I said, think about this. And she created the word Pearl. But now, of course, there's a whole meaning behind it. I always say, we call it Pearl. These are practices to integrate into an organization and leadership work. We call them Pearl because think about the ocean. Think about oysters. Oysters have a unique ability to take irritants that get into them, particles of sand, and turn them
and make them beautiful.
Right? Versus for many other organisms, that irritant can result in a loss in a limb or even the death of the organism. Right? Our organization's everyday work is filled with also irritants. They come in the boss of conflicts with suppliers, customers, targets that seem possibly hard, economic conditions, change, tiffs with coworkers, all kinds. And I think about Pearl as the 5 key skills that you can embed into an organization to turn those irritants into massive sources of value.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the 5.
Mm-hmm.
No surprise, P is purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if everybody showed up and found meaning in what they're doing
Mm-hmm.
at work
Mm-hmm.
versus just a way to earn a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
E is energy.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if the workplace, actually people were excited to show up on Monday and they left with more energy versus leave exhausted, like
Mm-hmm.
most people do.
Running out the door. Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, thank God it's Friday. The whole
Mm-hmm.
chain came because people are like, oh my God, it's a Friday, right? I
Mm-hmm.
can't wait for the weekend to start.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, no, like I love my work and the
Mm-hmm.
way we work together, this kind of gives me
Mm-hmm.
energy.
Mm-hmm.
A is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Awareness around our own wiring and how we are showing up. And
Mm-hmm.
are we falling into what are called anti-learning, protection mindsets, or resilient mindsets?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, the research at Harvard shows only 20% of us are at a level where we can operate and thrive in the complexity around, right? So there's a real notion of where am I on that continuum and how am I building the skills to thrive? R is about relationships. Imagine if every one of your employees felt psychologically safe and trusted to give you your best ideas versus feel that you're going to be judged.
Right. Or
About
worse.
how far, right? You will come. How much far you'd come. Like you're getting the best ideas from every person who works rather than just they doing the job you've told them to do. Because now instead of a single intelligence, you have the collective intelligence that is always bigger and faster adapting. And the last one, L, is what we call life force. So purpose, energy, awareness, relationships, and life force. L is about life force. Think about how people work today. Back-to-back meetings all day long, little to no breaks. We're not eating or we're eating while we are working, just trying to rush through the day. Completely, the work is not done in neuro-friendly ways. We know post 90 minutes, our attention drops, our stress starts to accumulate, decision biases start to creep in, quality errors start to creep in. But L is about life force. How do we fundamentally change our relationship with stress? And how do we change our work so that we truly can be at our cognitive, at our emotional, and our physical best? If we are able to take these 5 skills and not just teach them, but integrate them into the way we work, we just create a massive unlock of energy, of potential,
Right.
of impact in the world. We change it all, and we change the outside impact, the results, because we're changing the inside.
Right. And I think one of the things that everyone needs to remember is no matter what they're doing, it is important. I mean, it comes back to what you were saying about trees and the wind. I mean, trees are providing us with shade. They're providing, and we're just saying, it's a tree.
Yeah.
No, what are the other things? And so even if you're doing something basic, you're working at McDonald's, right? You're providing nutrition. We'll kind of put that in quotes, right? But there are so many things that you are doing that are positive. And so think of that. I am in Atlanta, the land of Chick-fil-A, and I love it when and it's always interesting to when because you check out and they are told that they are always to say, "It's been my pleasure to serve you." And I love it when, are they saying, "It's my pleasure to serve you," right? This is my job. I am here because my mom told me I had to get a job. I'm here because I got to pay my bills, whatever. Or "It's been my pleasure to serve you."
Yes.
And I mean, just same sentence, right? But the meaning behind it is what is different. Now, there are times where it really is. "It's been my pleasure to serve you," right? But how can we look for that? I think one of the biggest things, and this is what I learned through all of my ordeals with my illnesses, is happiness is a choice. Yes. It is truly a choice. I have had over 35 surgeries in 9 years.
Wow.
And and I go into all of it, usually, not always, laughing and trying to make the people around me laugh. I mean, all of those things. And I have people, they say, you're always so happy. How do you do it? And I say, okay, first of all, I'm not always happy. There are times where I don't feel good. I am tired. I'm whatever. So, but I don't put that out there. Now there are, like my husband, he gets to know when I'm not having a good day. The rest of the world doesn't get to know it. You just don't need to be doing that. And it's funny. I was talking with someone about humor and all of that, and we were coming up with jokes to say to our doctors and all of those things. And one of the things, they'll ask me, how you doing, and I say, well, I woke up and I'm not looking up at 6 feet of dirt. And sometimes people don't quite get that,
Yes.
but yeah, I mean, it's all about how are you choosing to see it? I'm choosing to see that having cancer is a blessing. Now that sounds really weird. I mean, and I have stage 4 cancer. So this is not, this is not something that is good, but it's a blessing because of the people that I have met, the relationships that I have found. One of the things that I have learned is tell people you love them, because you don't know when you might not be able to. And so yeah, happiness and being happy, all of those, that is a choice that we
There's
can make.
absolutely a choice, Deb, and I can see it, right, as somebody who really embodies and lives it. One thing that you said, how can cancer be a blessing? How can the loss of somebody who's so dear to you and sometimes can be a blessing? It's a blessing because if it can be a blessing if you make it. You can either kind of wallow in it and say, why me? And go through all of that. Or you can say, this is a reminder that I have to live every day as if it's my last.
Right.
And
Because
I'm
it
going to
could
make
be.
the most of it. Right? I'm going to make the most of it. Because it very well could be my last.
Oh,
I
yeah.
might go into this and might not come out.
Right. There's a bus out there that's got my name on it.
And isn't it better to live with that diagnosis, but living every moment of our life versus maybe nothing happens to you, but you lived 65, 70, 80 years of your life, not actually experiencing life, but chasing something out there.
Right.
Because there's so many of us around. You see them walk through life like zombies. We wake up, we rush, we get breakfast, get kids ready, send them to school, show up to work, get through, checking the list, come back, pick up the kids, cook dinner. We're so tired. We pour ourselves glasses of wine. We'll sit, binge, watch Netflix. Maybe we'll talk to our husband or wife. And then we're going to go to sleep and we're going to rinse and repeat. And the weekend comes, we break a sigh of relief because I don't have to show up to work that drains me. But I've got all these errands to do.
My to-do list is huge.
I've got to take kids out. I might get a workout in. I have to do things, right? We kind of are doing things continuously. We forget that we're called human beings, versus human doings. And we go through this beautiful experience of life, not actually experiencing life. We're just running towards the end state, which is what? Which is death. We all are going to die.
Yeah. Nobody gets out of that.
Right? So why do you want to rush your way through it? And by the way, all the research shows beyond a certain level, more money, more fame, more power
is
not filling you with more joy. What is turning your life into service for others. Doing all the things you need to do, right? Like there's nothing wrong with money, power, or fame, but it's not getting lost in it. And so, I think it can be a big blessing. My bout with anxiety was a blessing for me because it turned me inwards. I could have gone another 15 years because, professionally, I was doing great, right? 7-figure salary, like being a McKinsey partner, people are like, oh my God, you're an amazing, like you're smart, you've got access to anybody and everybody who listens. So everything externally is out there. But what is all of that worth if internally your experience isn't one of experiencing joy and meaning and connected to what your unique contribution in the world can be?
Right. Well, oh my gosh, Ashish, this has been so much fun. And we've only got a couple minutes left. So for those who are saying, I need to know more, how do they find you and what are the services that you provide?
Yeah, sure. So listen, they can find us super easily on happinesssquad.com. We also post quite regularly on both our Happiness Squad
Mhm.
channel on LinkedIn, Instagram, as well as through my own personal posts on from my profile. So
Mhm.
we can have them. I'll send that to you. You'll have them in the show notes.
Mhm.
In terms of the work we do, Deb, we actually have two key offerings that we are actually working with organizations.
Okay.
We have a program and a community for individuals. They can
Mhm.
join it and they can do the Rewire program, which
Mhm.
is a program focused on micro practices, 5 minutes or less that people can integrate. They can do
Mhm.
that. They'll find it under Rewire Professionals. But a big chunk, almost all the work we do is with organizations.
Mhm.
And I can
Right.
say this year, we've had the pleasure last year of serving Google, Danone, Pepsi, the city of Fort Collins,
Mhm.
CU Leeds, the business school,
Mhm.
the School of Detroit Mercy
Mhm.
Engineering, and several other organizations on really doing a journey with 25, 30, 50, up to 130 people
Mhm.
who've gone on a journey as a team to build and integrate these practices
Mhm.
into their lives. So we have an offering called Rewire, which is all around individual micro
Mhm.
practices. And literally 4 months into programs, we see 80% of the people report anywhere from 3 to 5, 5 being very high,
Mhm.
3 being moderate,
Mhm.
improvements in their ability to manage
Wow.
stress, productivity.
Mhm.
And they do it because they're building
Mhm.
habits. Almost everybody picks up
Mhm.
3 to 5 micro practices
Mhm.
that are actually making the impact.
Mhm.
So we have a program around Rewire
Mhm.
that is super easy, super accessible. It can be done virtually. It
Mhm.
can be integrated into once a month,
Mhm.
lunch and learns or whatever do you have at your
Mhm.
organization. We also have a more in-depth program around flourishing,
Mhm.
which starts with a diagnostic,
Mhm.
which is really helping you assess from a 0 to 100 at what potential is your organization
Mhm.
operating. And based on that, we then help you create a customized journey
Mhm.
for you to implement the Pearl practices.
Mhm.
And we'll choose based on where you are, which one or two will make the biggest difference.
Mhm.
But the key is it's not training, it's transformation.
Mhm.
So the idea behind is we, of course, train people up, but then we support them
Mhm.
in actually implementing
Mhm.
it
Right.
with their organization,
Mhm.
with their teams.
Mhm.
So those are the different offerings. We have Rewire, we have Pearl, and we have this diagnostic that we always precede before Pearl.
Mhm.
But friends, here's my invitation to you. As business owners, as leaders, when it comes to physical assets, when it comes to investments, you always know at what potential they're operating. You
Mhm.
measure it. If you run a store, you look at store sales every day,
Mhm.
right? Every hour, and you
Mhm.
make changes the next day and what you're going to do different. If
Mhm.
you run a plant, you look at data every hour,
Mhm.
every week, every day, every week. How do we get better? Imagine if you could get the same data for your people. Most of the time, we
Mhm.
don't know at what potential our people are
Right.
operating. We might know, are they happy? Are they not? Are
Mhm.
they engaged? Are they not? Are
Mhm.
they stressed? Are they not?
Mhm.
Are they leaving or are they not?
Mhm.
But you actually don't know from the investments. By the way, you make more investments on people than machines.
Mhm.
What potential are you
Mhm.
getting? Because if you're able to
Mhm.
tap that human magic that lies in every
Mhm.
organization, if you are able to unlock it through your people,
Mhm.
you create an amazing impact in the
Mhm.
world. You create an amazing impact for
Mhm.
shareholders, and you create an amazing impact for yourself.
Mhm.
I think business is the highest calling we can have because through it we have the ability. Look, you can be a monastic, you can
Mhm.
go to an ashram, you can go to a monastery and live a
Mhm.
secluded life. But business allows you to amplify your impact
Mhm.
so much in the world.
Right.
So I think it's the noblest profession,
Mhm.
but it can be just like cancer can be a curse or a blessing.
Mhm.
Business can be a curse or a
Mhm.
blessing if you choose to go through it intentionally, connected to your why or
Mhm.
why you're doing it. So if you're excited about bringing this work, please reach out to us. It'll be our pleasure to support you and really kick off 2025 way with a new, different way in which we create value in the world.
I love it. I love it. Well, this really has been so much fun. And I would love to talk with you again, because I think this is such an important message that we need to get out to people. But until we discuss this again, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
I think the final thought that I have, friends, is I think I will go back there, but say this all the time. Happiness is a choice. Flourishing is a choice. And it is an inner game, right? We have zero chance in controlling the external world. We have 100% chance in mastering our inner one. And if we do that, collectively, we will change the external world, Mahatma Gandhi, one of the great, the father of the nation for India. I'll end with this. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world.
I love it. I love it. Well, folks, this is a great message to start off 2025. Carry it into 26, 27, all those years too. But yeah, this is a great message to start off the year. I'm Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun speaking with Ashish Kothari of Happiness Squad. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.